Do you notice when you're scrolling your phone on social media, watching YouTube videos, after a while, you start to feel a bit flat? The same videos that were giving you that dopamine, that interest, no longer doing it. You probably are aware that it is affecting your mood, this behavior. And you ask yourself, what if I cut this dopamine out? Would this benefit me? Essentially, would a dopamine fast benefit me? And as a busy entrepreneur with a 9 to 5, trying to optimize your focus and productivity, you're also asking yourself, will this help me be more productive? I'm Thomas, I'm a medical doctor, and in this video, I'm going to explore that idea. I'm going to give you the principles from Anna Lembke's book, Dopamine Nation, who is probably one of the biggest leaders when it comes to dopamine and its effect on your mood and performance. So first of all, what is dopamine? Dopamine is the neurotransmitter in your brain that is responsible for pleasure, or more accurately, it is responsible for wanting, for craving, for motivation. And this is released when you're excited, when your brain is anticipating pleasure. Not actually the pleasure itself, but in anticipation and excitement of an event or stimulus happening. So you release this when you're watching social media, when you're on YouTube, when you're watching porn, when you're eating fast food, but also you release it when you're exercising, when you're meditating. And in this way, there are two types of dopamine. There is easy, fast dopamine, as Anna Lembke describes it, as well as hard dopamine. And essentially the difference between this bad dopamine and good dopamine is how easy it is to obtain. The easy dopamine, you just flick on your phone and instantly you're getting dopamine hits. Whereas the hard dopamine, you actually have to earn it. You actually have to put your trainers on and go for a run. You actually have to go in and have a cold shower. So usually there is an activation energy of doing something hard before you get that pleasure release. And why is this important? Well, aside from the fact that if you engage in the hard dopamine, you're naturally going to be improving your life, you're going to be progressing, you're going to be doing good things, and counter that to the idea of engaging in the easy dopamine, you're having a detrimental effect on your life. You're not progressing, you're getting worse. But there's also one main difference that will make you really rethink succumbing to the easy short-term dopamine and instead putting in that effort and going for the hard dopamine. And that is, of course, how you feel after engaging in easy dopamine. You'll get an initial short-term hit of dopamine, and then it will come crashing down. And that is because your brain will regulate you're left with the limited number of receptors, and therefore the normal everyday activity like going for a walk, meditating, exercising, socializing with people, you just won't feel as good. You'll feel flat, you'll feel low energy. And this is why that after you expose yourself to YouTube, to your phone, to other easy dopamine hits, you feel flat because of that come down period, because you have less dopamine receptors and you don't have that stimuli anymore. And that's why it takes more and more stimulation to feel that same response. But is this the same with the good hard dopamine, exercise, cold showers, etc.? No, it's not actually. And that's because instead of getting that easy, quick dopamine straight away, you expose yourself to pain, to discomfort, to being hard. And that experience means that the dopamine that you receive, instead of the come down happening after, it's almost like the come down's already happened. The pain has already happened. And what Anna Lembke describes is your brain basically has a way of regulating between pleasure and pain. So if you have the pain and discomfort before the activity, then the dopamine is going to be released without a negative come down after. And essentially, your dopamine goes up and then it fades away, but it doesn't go below your baseline level. On the other hand, the short-term dopamine hits go up very fast and then come down below your baseline. So now we understand what dopamine is and the difference between easy dopamine and hard dopamine. How can we actually use this information to what many people describe as a dopamine detox? And can we use this to help our productivity, to feel better, to grow our business better and faster? Well, yes and no. Traditionally, a dopamine detox is seen as depriving yourself of all sorts of dopamine, so not just Netflix, your phone, and in a very extreme version, this is basically in monk mode, where you sit in silence without any stimulation, and you do this for a period of time. This is very extreme, and if you were to do this I'm sure that you would experience upregulation of those dopamine receptors, and having done it, you will feel more receptive to small amounts of dopamine, to natural dopamine. But is that really practical? Is that really sustainable? And of course, having come out of that monk environment, you're not really going to have the skills to be able to respond to everyday stimulation, to regulate it, because realistically you can't just sit in a cave all day. So that's why a dopamine detox isn't really effective if you were to do it in an extreme way like that. But what you could do, and is probably more practical and sustainable, instead of going such extreme ways, it's a week or 30 days or 90 days, it's going to be a long-term lifestyle change. So that's why it is probably more important in the long term to make a small change, to track it over time and to sustain it. And eventually that will become part of your identity. And that is the goal, because if you really want to have a higher baseline of dopamine, that means you're going to be more productive and focused, then you want to make a small change that's long lasting and permanent. So yes, extreme dopamine deprivation can be effective, but most likely their results and effects will only be in the short term, because you're more likely to go back and break the rules. Now, aside from making small changes to limit your easy dopamine fix, you also want to maximize your hard dopamine activities. Remember, these are activities that make you feel better, but also improve your life. They're healthy habits. It could be going for a run, going to the gym, having a cold shower. And when you're depriving yourself of these small easy dopamines, you need to replace them with another source of dopamine to make it easier. Because if you don't do that, you're just going to sit there with cravings in discomfort, feel bad, feel unproductive. So you need another source of dopamine, and you get this from these hard activities. For example, if you have a cold shower, what will happen is the dopamine that's released will act over a few hours, and it will be a slow release of dopamine. And as I said, it won't go below your baseline. So this is a really quick, easy, effective way to feel better over the next few hours. And when your dopamine's higher, of course, you're going to have less cravings, less desire for short-term, easy dopamine effects. And furthermore, you still can have access to these easy dopamine effects, but the key is to delay them once your dopamine levels are already higher. So, for example, if you've already gone for a run, if you've already had a cold shower, then you go and watch a movie or watch Netflix later in the day, then you're going to enjoy the movie. It's not going to be addictive. You're not going to rely on it or have a craving for it, because you've already built up your dopamine levels. You already feel good, and this is more of a pleasurable experience. It's kind of like a cherry on the top of your mood, and you won't get such a big come down because you've taken care of your dopamine levels through these hard activities throughout the day. So in summary, if you're an entrepreneur looking to optimize your dopamine levels, then I would suggest you want to maximize them for the long term, make small changes to limit your easy dopamine sources and to increase your hard dopamine sources, but also remember to reward yourself and enjoy the easy dopamine, but just delay it later in the day after you've focused on the hard dopamine. Hopefully with this knowledge, you will feel better over the long term. You will find it easier to sit in silence without stimulation, to focus better, and to be more productive on your side hustle or business that you're building.